Julia Formatine, and in this presentation I'll be discussing the differentiation of gender, or in other words, how an embryo develops as a male or as a female. And this whole process is very complex and really amazing, so this really is just a pretty basic explanation of how it happens. So females have two X chromosomes. They inherit one X chromosome from the mother and one from the father. And then the males have one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. They inherit that Y from the father and the X from the mother. And the presence or absence of the Y chromosome is basically what determines whether development of the embryo proceeds as a male or as a female. Each egg and each sperm, each of those have 23 chromosomes, and that 23rd pair of chromosomes are called the sex chromosomes, and that is what determines gender. An egg has the one X chromosome, and then a sperm will either have one X chromosome or one Y. And then those other 22 pairs of chromosomes are called autosomal chromosomes, and they direct development of parts of the human body other than the sex organs, and then characteristics such as hair color and blood type. So when an egg gets fertilized, it ultimately has 46 chromosomes, 23 coming from the egg and 23 coming from the sperm. And 2 of those 46 are either XX or XY. So here's an image of a typical human karyotype, and you can see these 22 autosomal chromosomes here, and then the 23rd pair of sex chromosomes. And you'll notice that the Y chromosome here is a lot shorter than the X, and this is because the X actually has many genes that the Y does not have. Both male and female sex organs have 3 sets of structures. The first are the gonads, and these are the organs that produce gametes, so the gonads are the eggs and the sperm. And then there are the internal genitalia, and that consists of accessory organs and ducts that connect the gonads with the outside environment. And then, of course, you have the external genitalia, and those are the external reproductive structures. Reproductive structures don't begin to differentiate until about the 7th week of embryonic development. Up until that point, embryonic tissues are considered bipotential, which means that they are neutral before they've differentiated because they can't be morphologically identified. The neutral fetus has the potential to develop into either male or female organs, depending on both genetic and hormonal influences. All embryos are destined to become female unless certain masculine influences come into play. And the bipotential or neutral gonad consists of an outer cortex and an inner medulla. And under the influence of a developmental signal, the medulla will develop into testes. And then without this developmental signal, the cortex will become ovarian tissue. And we'll discuss that further in length a little bit shortly. So here's an image of what an embryo would look like during the 7th week of development, or in other words, when the mother is 7 weeks pregnant. And this is about what it would look like when these male and female structures start to develop. So at this point, the embryo is comparable to the size of a blueberry, and it's only about 0.3 to 0.5 inches. So to think that it's already starting to differentiate into a male or a female is really pretty amazing. The SRY gene is a gene on the Y chromosome that initiates male embryonic development, and this gene is responsible for development of male phenotypes. The SRY gene produces a protein called testis determining factor, which acts as a transcription factor. So it binds to specific regions of the DNA and activates certain male genes. And this influences the gonadal medulla of the fetus to develop male gonads, which are the testes. So in an absence of the SRY gene, the gonads develop into ovaries. And after the gonads have differentiated into the testes, if the Y gene or SRY gene is present, then the embryo can begin to secrete testosterone and anti-Müllerian hormone, which will eventually influence development of the male genitalia. And the internal genitalia is also bipotential, like we said, or neutral. So fetuses have 2 pairs of accessory ducts. These are the Wolffian ducts and the Müllerian ducts. So as development proceeds as either male or female, one of these pairs of ducts develops while the other degenerates. So the Wolffian duct differentiates into structures in the male genital tract, and the Mullerian duct is where the female organs will develop from. In a fetus that's developing into a male, Sertoli cells of the testes secrete the Mullerian inhibiting hormone, which is also called anti-Mullerian hormone. And this causes the Mullerian ducts to atrophy so that they don't develop into female structures. And as this happens, the Wolffian ducts are stimulated by testosterone, causing them to develop into spermatic ducts, ejaculatory ducts, and seminal vesicles. So obviously the male reproductive parts. And then testosterone also causes development of the male external genitalia. And on the contrary, in a fetus that's developing into a female, the ovaries develop along the Mullerian ducts, and they don't have the anti-Mullerian hormone, so the ducts develop into the vagina, the uterus, and the fallopian tubes. So without testosterone, the Wolffian ducts degenerate, and without DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone, the external genitalia become female structures. Here's just a visual representation of the two ducts. So you can see both right here. And as development proceeds, on the right, here's the Wolffian duct system that has formed into male reproductive organs due to both testosterone, which is an androgen, and the anti-Mullerian anti-Mullerian hormone. And then the left side here shows the Mullerian duct that is formed into the female reproductive organs due to the absence of testosterone as well as the absence of Mullerian inhibiting hormone. And then this is just kind of a little summary of how everything we talked about and how embryonic genders differentiate. So as you can see here, after fertilization, the embryo either has two X or an X and a Y chromosome. If there is a Y chromosome present, then there's an SRY gene, which causes the undifferentiated gonads to form into testes, right here. If not, they'll form into ovaries by default. And then as the testes produce testosterone and anti-Mullerian hormone, the Mullerian ducts will degenerate and the Wolffian ducts will develop into male structures. And then on the female side, due to a lack of testosterone and anti-Mullerian hormone, female structures will form along the Mullerian ducts.